Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the June 21st session of the Administration and Operations Committee. As far as attendance, we've got Councillor Gatward is attending via Zoom this evening, and other councillors and mayor are in session. Anybody with anything to add to the agenda? Seeing none, can I get approval of the agenda? Councillor Coleman, Councillor Howes, any questions? Councillor Gatward. You're on mute, Councillor.
I have one item under other business, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, with Councillor Gatward and other business, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Declaration of pecuniary interest. Anybody have any at this time? Councillor Ferrier?
I'll have to recuse myself for 8.4.
8.4.
I would also like that separated so I can vote on the others.
Anybody else? Okay, Councillor Howes.
Here, when we get to 8.2, I'd like to separate that, please.
Okay, yeah,
we'll get into that.
No conflict, though?
No conflict.
Okay, so with just the one conflict there, thank you very much. If any others arise through the meeting, please let us know at the time. Adoption of previous minutes. We have no delegations petitions this evening. Adoption of previous minutes, if I could. Councillor Bell, Mayor Bailey, questions on those previous minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? They are carried. Any business arising from the minutes? Seeing none, we will move on. Consent items. There's a few consent items here to be approved. We've got 7.1.1, which is CIP 22-04, 125 Grand River Street North in Paris. Can I get a mover to get it on the floor, please? Councillor Coleman, Councillor Wheat. Any questions on this recommendation? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 7.1.2, which is RPT-0221-22, the community grant request received after the 2022 allocations. Can I get somebody to Mayor Bailey to put it on the floor? Councillor Ferrier. Any questions on that? Councillor Gatward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could staff please tell us how much in total we did end up giving the Burford Agricultural Society, including this?
Yep, just bear with us just 1 second.
Thank you.
Heather?
Thank you. Through the chair, we gave the Burford Agricultural Society $8,750 plus this, which brings us up to $12,750 with this.
Councillor Gatward?
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on that report? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Consent items to be received. There's a couple of them there. Can I get somebody to move them both? Councillor Miller, Councillor Wheat. Questions on either? Seeing none. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Committee reports. 8.1, Brant Connects Committee minutes. Get a mover, please. Councillor Howes. Second. Councillor McAlpine. Questions on that report? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 8.2, you wanted separated, Councillor Howes, correct?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we're going to go on to 8.3, Tourism Advisory Committee minutes. Get a mover, please. Councillor Coleman. Counselor Howes, questions on that report? All in favor? Opposed? Is carried. 8.4, going to be separated. So 8.5, the Community Improvement Plan Committee minutes. Can I get a mover? Counselor Howes, Counselor Miller, questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. 8.6, Brant Connects report minutes. Counselor Miller? Counselor McAlpine? Questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. And 8.7, Accessibility Advisory Committee. Can I move her? Councilor Ferrier, Councilor Coleman. Questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, we're going to go back to 8.2. Councilor Howes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a point of clarification. I'm mentioned in the minutes of this report of first meeting and the cemetery meeting, and it's not me, it's my dad. Which just goes to show it is still a small town. So it's like, I'm not on that committee. I'm not the chair of that committee. I'm not respectfully submitting the report. It's none of that's me, it's my dad.
Appreciate that, Councilor Howes. It's not me, it's my friend, but you're going to use it's not me, it's my dad. Okay, we can fix that up. Thank you for pointing that out. I'm sure Bob would be happy with that. Okay, that being said, with that correction, Joan, Councilor Gatward?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I want to speak to number 3 on the Cemetery Advisory Committee report. When I read the minutes of the meeting and that our staff member, Ms. Ballantyne, mentioned some concerns about making a policy and about possible costs for this cemetery and for all of our cemeteries. I don't know what the earliest burials are in the Paris Plains Cemetery, but I know that we do have a lot of old cemeteries in the county that are equally worthy of being designated. And so I'm not sure that I approve of doing it piecemeal, and that we should come forward first with policy and costs and how these cemeteries would be recognized before we actually start designating them. And I would like to defer this, number 3, until such time as we get that staff report from the cemetery division with more information for our committee. And I'll be seconder on that deferral, unless you want to have discussion first, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I think at this point in time, it says that the designation of the Paris Plains Church Community or Paris Plains Church Road Cemetery be supported in principle. I don't think that's a full approval of anything that's happening. It's just the suggestion or the idea is supported in principle. That's kind of how I take it. I don't know if anybody from staff would. Councilor McAlpine, you want to speak to that?
I think that's the general idea, is that the staff wanted to sort of take more review, in-depth look at it, and overall with the other cemeteries as well. But we do support it because of the history with 1812, 1837 rebellion, and World War I, World War II. There's concerns about further development out in that area that may affect that cemetery specifically. And they want to have some protection in place to help mitigate that in the future. So that's the concern at this point with that particular cemetery. So that's the reasoning behind it. So.
Did you catch that, Councilor Gatward?
Yes, I did, and the development in the area should never affect a cemetery. We don't normally move them, but I do understand why, and certainly there's other 1812 cemeteries in the county and earlier. So will the Cemetery Advisory Committee be looking at all the cemeteries
It,
in the future?
it does say further on in the report, Councillor Gatward, it does say that noted the uniqueness and potential to designate each of the 35 plus cemeteries in the county. So I'm assuming by that report, the statement in the report, that would suggest to me that they're going to be looking at all of them.
And that's why we need a policy, because I don't know if all of them are qualified to be designated or not, and it would be expensive to do that. But I'm glad that it's being looked into and that staff will be bringing back more information for us to make an informed decision. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mayor Bailey, you wanted to add something?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Gatward, we did talk about that, exactly what you just said, Councillor Gatward. I brought up the point that I thought that all of our cemeteries had burials earlier, as early to qualify as a heritage cemetery. So staff has already been asked to bring the report through. So I might not say that in the exact words, but we did bring that up, and we had lengthy conversation at that cemetery meeting, advisory meeting, that's what we were going to do, is try to get as many cemeteries designated at the same time. So, it's not something we went through quickly. We took the time to actually go through the cemeteries. So the report's coming forward, Councillor Gatward.
Perfect. Thank you for that. My apologies, committee. Councillor Howes, you put this on the floor. Who was the seconder for? Councillor McAlpine? Okay, sorry for that. Any other questions about the cemetery report? Councillor Miller?
Just while we're on the Paris Plains Church Road, under the discussion, the committee discussed the potential for cemetery driving tours, interest of the public. I think that's a great idea. I hope they follow up on that. I know when we travel, my family, we've taken many tours of cemeteries when we travel, because there's so much information. So support that idea.
Any other questions, comments on that report? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. For 8.4, Councilor Ferrier, you'll conflicting that. Can I get somebody to move it, get it on the floor? Councilor Coleman, Councilor Howes. Questions on this? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Councilor, rejoin us. Thank you. Okay, so that's it for committee reports. Staff reports, 9.1, RPT-0166-22, the appointment of the engineer for the Holt Municipal Drain. There is a recommendation there. Can I get somebody to move it to get it on the floor? Councilor Wheat? Councilor Miller? Any questions on that report? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 9.2, RPT-0223-22, the request to refund development charges for 17 Washington Street. Can I get a mover? Councilor Ferrier? Mayor Bailey? Questions? Noting the recommendation, Councilor Gatward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In addition to applying through the grant program, could the church, we hand out a significant amount of dollars for the community improvement program or plan for buildings that are being improved. And I'm wondering if the church, because they're building a new addition, would that qualify?
I believe with the CIP, it's just a certain location area downtown. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the way it works.
So this isn't,
They would be outside that boundary.
Yeah. Well, that's unfortunate because the maximum, although the maximum was 10,000, it says, we just heard tonight that another group got more than that in grants. So perhaps this project might qualify for more money than the 10,000. Thank you.
Any other questions on this report? Councillor House.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And just reading through that, and I realize it's a challenging situation for the church. I wanted to clarify, we do not charge property taxes to churches. Is that true? Or is that myth?
Through Mr. Chair, I believe that's true, but I'll confirm that with the treasurer. I do believe that is correct, though. That they are exempt
From,
by impact.
So that popped into my mind while I was reading the evaluation of this, and I do hope if the community grant process is the best avenue for them to recoup some of these costs, I sincerely hope they approach that process and maybe from more than one angle.
Thank you for that. Any other questions on that report? Seeing none, all in favor of the recommendation? Opposed? That is carried. 9.3 RPT-222-22, an update on the delegation of authority bylaw. There is a recommendation. Can I get a mover? Councillor Coleman, Councillor Wheat. Questions on that report? Michael, did you want to speak to the report or just questions?
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Councillor Gatward, you had a question? You're on mute, Councillor.
Sorry, I had a couple questions. There's on page 7, it's talking about joint use of county facilities, e.g. lawn bowling, tennis clubs, curling club, and school boards. I know we use school board facilities. The curling club, we don't have curling at our arenas, do we?
No.
So, do we actually use the curling club, the county? I wasn't aware of that. That's my first question.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe, I'm not exactly sure, I believe we actually do run some joint programming with the Parish Curling Club. I don't think we really do a lot, but we do a lot of what I call joint initiatives with various community groups that encourage people to be active.
Oh, well, I'd be interested in knowing more about that. Thank you. And the next item I had a question or suggestion about is on page 25 of the report. Development and engineering standards updates. This item is listed that it would be authorized by the general manager of operations. And the reason that caught my attention, we have, as everyone knows, development and engineering standards for new subdivisions. And recently, well, I'll preface my comment by saying, last year a developer called me and he said he wanted to update me on the pre-servicing that was going into the subdivision in Oakland, the new one. And I said, oh, okay, fine. That's nice. You can tell me what you're up to. So he did. And when he mentioned installing the wiring for streetlights, I asked him, this is a rural subdivision. It's not urban, like in the town of Paris or the village of St. George. I said, how many streetlights do you have to put up? I said, I hope it isn't too many. And he said, well, I'll check into it. And the answer I got back was that they had to install the streetlights according to the development and engineering standards at the county. And I think it's set for any subdivision, and that perhaps there isn't a difference between rural and urban. Anyway, they recently installed the streetlights, and I can't believe how many there is. I think there's 16 or 18 streetlights on a short little street. And I thought to myself, is that really, really necessary? Because the rest of the village only has streetlights at the intersections. And I'm hoping that the rest of the village doesn't expect to have the rest of the village lit up like this new street. So I just wanted to mention that. I don't know if staff could look at that for the future for rural subdivisions that are not in urban areas proper. And maybe they could let us know if it's possible to reduce the number of streetlights. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Michael?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I mean, I can't really get into a detailed conversation about that. And this, we're not proposing a change to that, to the development engineering standards. We're just proposing to do minor changes to those at the staff level. So, but maybe to back up a little bit, development engineering standards would be based on some standard, some existing standard. I would suspect our streetlight coverage would be based, Mr. Walt maybe will correct me, on the Ontario Traffic Manual. It would advise us on how many streetlights per whatever lane kilometer would be to provide appropriate lighting, I would assume. Mr. Walton's nodding his head. So we don't make these things up ourselves. We usually rely on some existing standard of design, and then we incorporate those existing standards into our design and engineering guidelines. It's my understanding that the design and engineering guidelines, which are currently approved by council, require all new subdivisions to have street lighting, because I think it is desired by new residents. Existing subdivisions don't, and we, as council knows, we do get requests quite often for additions to street lighting in older subdivisions or rural areas, things like that. So again, the design and engineering guidelines would be based on some existing standard for whatever feature it is, whether it's street lighting or catch basin covers or curbing. It would all be based on some existing standard. And Ontario Traffic Manual would probably be guiding streetlights.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. And I do recall, Mr. Chairman, that we used to have meetings with developers when we were designing these standards. And if it's in some traffic manual somewhere, then that's fine. I just want to know where so I can familiarize myself with it for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions on this report? Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just a general question, more on the recommendation than anything specific, through you to Michael, if you wouldn't mind commenting. And I support the delegation of authority to staff on as outlined. Every once in a while, you'll get someone somewhere come out of the blue that will harangue a councillor about a decision that staff made that they disagree with, and they were designated that authority. I'm just wondering what a suggested protocol would be for a councillor who faces that hypothetical scenario, ratepayer going crazy about a staff decision.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we've got different processes in here. I mean, my advice is that if a councillor is not happy with a delegated staff decision, you should direct the council to contact the general manager that's involved, and it's articulated in this document about which general managers involved in those various delegated authorities. and see if we can problem solve around that. Sometimes it's a simple answer, sometimes it's not. Usually, if that doesn't work, then it's probably going to get bumped up to me. And at some point, if I can't, we believe staff made the right decision, then we will always suggest to the resident that they can come to council. I think that's the process. Now, notwithstanding that, if there's been an error in the process, we have an internal investigation process too. So if something hasn't worked or we've grievously erred in something, we've got an internal investigation process that we can trigger as well. Hopefully that addresses the question.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Michael. Michael, this list represents a list of items that you are seeking authority to delegate to staff. What was on what were the next 3 items that might have come onto this list? And are they significant?
Just clarification, what other things are we looking at right now? Is that the question?
I have a general desire that we delegate as much as we can to staff to improve the efficiency of the operation of the county. So this represents a list of those that you think we as council would accept. What are the next 3 items that might be valuable in terms of improving the efficiency of county operations that if you could delegate to staff would improve things?
So through you, Mr. Chair. So the one which we will be bringing forward, but it'll be through a different venue, will be some changing to our current purchasing levels. So they haven't been changed. I wrote a new purchasing bylaw the year I got here, 2012, and it hasn't been changed. So I think we're low. We would like to get closer to our municipal comparator. So I think you may see that before the end of the term. So that would be the first one. One that we actually did have on this, and Jody and I, after some discussion with planning, took out was the current communication tower protocols. And I'm not suggesting that we want to delegate that to staff, but the current process, which is chewing up a lot of staff capacity in a group that we don't have a ton of capacity in. So I think it was suggested that we could delegate that process to staff. I don't think that's right either. So I think we are going to do some internal review on that and likely be coming to you with some proposed amendments to try to make sure that, because that tower protocol, it's something that we put a lot of energy to, but at the end of the day, our decision doesn't really matter. We validate that it may or may not meet our criteria, but it doesn't influence the final decision. The final decision is with the federal government. So we think we could maybe reduce some of the staff capacity issues around that, but still make sure that members of the public have a public forum to express their opinions on those. So we're going to be doing some work on that. So those would be the 2 that I think we could see some change in. Beyond that, I think we've captured everything at the staff level we thought was appropriate. We believe that the process is working well.
Thank you.
Good. Any other questions on that report? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 9.4, RPT-0165-22, Species at Risk Mitigation Plan for Drainage Works. There is a recommendation. Councillor Miller. Second. Mayor Bailey. Questions on that report? Councillor Miller.
I'll just say it's a very well-written report because I'm reading it and I'm thinking to myself, well, I wonder if this applies to all the drainage projects in the county. It does. How long does this last for? 5 years. What's it cost? $54,000. Can we renew it? Yeah, for $16,000. So I thought it was well written. My question is, are we just doing this strictly because that's what the law says, or are we aware at this point in time that there's any species at risk? Or am I asking too early?
Walton, can you help us out on that one? I don't think your mic's on.
Okay, I obviously haven't been here that much. Through the chair to Councillor Miller. I can guarantee you that we will find some species at risk when we look into this. And yes, we are doing it because it is required under the law. I think you'll find that this is a transition period where there are municipalities which have not entered into this task yet. And I don't think there's a lot of completed plans out there, but we need to get started at it, or someday we will find ourselves in problems. And I think the problems you'd find yourself in are a lot more than the 54,000.
Okay, thank you. I'm not suggesting we break the law or anything, so, but I would be interested, Rob, through you, Mr. Chair, and I don't know if we could have a follow-up, because I would be interested to know what species we found that were at risk. Because I know a lot's been talked about it, but I wasn't aware of any, so any info you have down the road would be greatly.
I guarantee that we would be bringing updates on this as it goes along.
Councillor Chambers.
Just a comment in support of this and going along with what the general manager suggested, just in terms of time alone, if problems occur in terms of drainage, time is money for everybody. And if this can facilitate something to save a month, 2 months, or perhaps a year of a seasonal cycle, it's well worth it. So I think the sooner we have this in place, the better it'll be in terms of getting things done in a timely manner, which has been a problem in the past.
Walton.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Chambers. Yeah, I agree with that, and I think we're talking, a year or two on some of these if you did run into real problems. In the fall, we do intend to bring a report to committee or council on progress we've made in the last year on the drainage superintendent's program, and I think we've got some very positive information there to provide to council, and it's a good news story.
Forward to that. Excellent. Any other questions on that report? None. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 9.5 RPT-0224-22 Brant Transit Operating Contract Extension. There is a recommendation. Can I get a mover? Councillor Ferrier, Councillor Bell. Questions on that report? Seeing none. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 9.6 RPT-0180-22 Contracted Solid Waste Facility Operation. There's a recommendation there. Councillor Coleman. Councillor Howes. Excellent report. Any questions on it? Seeing no, oh, Councillor Miller.
Well, it should be pointed out, just because there's no questions doesn't mean it's not a good report. And this is another one. Sheena's the previous one the same. I found as I read it, I found that Matt really presented well about why we are doing, or why he's proposing what he's Don't, to the staff members, they don't get a question, don't take offense. It's not that we haven't read it. It's just you have all the information.
Well said, Councillor. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And 9.7 RPT-0179-22 Architectural Services Award for the Paris Lawn Bowling Club. There is a recommendation. Councillor Howes. Second, Councillor Bell. Questions? Councillor Miller. Then Councillor Gatward.
Just as far as this 121,000, is any of this recuperated down the road through user fees charged to the members?
Cindy?
Through the chair, the facility is, I think, going to take a bit of a different turn. It will be for the Lawn Bowling Club, but also for the seniors group, and it could also be utilized for other community activities. So there would be an opportunity to collect revenue in the future once it is constructed.
Councillor Miller.
Just a question of clarification and 3D Cindy. So are they paying fees now? Like if somebody enrolls in hockey, they obviously pay a fee. If somebody enrolls in soccer, is that the same with the lawn bowling group?
Through the chair, I'm not 100% certain how the fees work. I think the club does collect fees, and the county has an arrangement with the club as far as who's maintaining the facility. I think they may give us some of the fees back, but I would need to do a bit of follow-up to give you some more specifics.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Gatward and then Counselor House.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple things I was wondering about. One of them's been answered already. I wondered about user fees, because if we're going to build this nice new building, I think that there should be a usage fee that the lawn bowling club pays each time they use it, just like other groups pay when they use the county facility. The other thing, is there a proposed size for this building? I don't recall seeing a business plan, and I know it mentions it in the report, but I was just wondering, is it similar to the building that's there now? Because I take it they don't want to mess up their lawn bowling greens or take any of that space away. And I guess that's all I had for now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Cindy?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Gatward. There was a business plan completed back in 2019, I believe, that was presented to committee and then was approved through council at that time. I believe that the facility is projected to be about 1,000 square feet, so it's not a large facility. But again, we're in the conceptual phase, so what it ends up being, it'll probably be close to that size.
Thank you.
Counselor House.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just all comparisons are being drawn to hockey team pay fee rate. That's right. I think it's worth pointing out that if my understanding of the history is correct, the lawn bowling club used to own the lawn bowling at one point, and it was one of those deals where the municipality took it over, I think, for $1, and so there's probably some kind of legacy understanding to a point, and then obviously as the facility transitions into a municipal facility that will suit more than that group of users, there will be opportunities for things. But I just wanted to kind of point that little history element as we're all drawing comparisons to other recreational user groups. Thank you.
Perfect. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, that's it for the reports. Communications, I see none. Other business, Councillor Gatward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was asked to let our committee know tonight that the Brant Railway Heritage Society is holding a meeting Thursday evening, June 23rd at 7:30 at the Mount Pleasant Community Center. They're having a speaker, and his name is Trevor the Time Traveler. Sounds interesting. Anyway, don't know if there's any Heritage Society members around the table, but you're all invited, and anybody you know that might like to attend. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Okay, nobody else stated anything under other business. I will check one more time. Anything for other business? Seeing none, motion to go in camera. Mayor Bailey, Councillor Coleman. All in favor? Opposed? In camera. We're going to take like a 1-minute break. We are back live again. Thank you. That brings us to number 13 on the agenda, which is the next meeting is July 19th. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Coleman at 7:01:24.